Do you have to look at maybe going a bit smaller anyway, given it's Collingwood is so their small forwards are really dangerous, but also it's going to be 15 degrees and really rainy on Saturday?
Yeah, we look at conditions and oppo and the venue, and a lot of fair questions around where we might look to change some things. We also look at, sometimes being a taller player doesn't necessarily mean you're not good at ground level. And so we've got a few like that. I think Dan Curtin's one of those guys that can really play the game at ground level and has a bigger, stronger body standing over the footy. So there's different things that we look at. We play a slightly taller forward line, and we're up against an opposition that are, there's not many better when it comes to the contest, especially if the conditions are going to be wet. They will outnumber us and they'll get to the contest. So it's going to be a really tough week for us. We'll make some decisions around selection with that in mind.
Usually small forwards. Small forwards, are they your biggest concern?
There's so many, hard matchups. There's so many things that's why they're rated as the best side in the competition at the moment, or one of, respectfully for others. There's so many weapons. Their scoring ability, it's not just their small forwards. They share it right around. It comes off of, their well-rounded game though. They defend so well, they're connected. I know a lot of teams around the league are looking at them at the moment and trying to work through what are they doing, because their connection's as good as any at this point, going back to when they won the flag.
How big will you keep? I sort of touched on Saturday night, but will you keep backing Dan Tierney to play, or so you sub them off? And
yeah, we look at a lot of things like team performance. We look at the individual and what it is we are looking for them to, I guess, execute as part of their role. DC or Dan Curtin, I've got to be careful using the nicknames. DC's doing some really positive stuff in different areas. On the weekend we subbed him out, and it was more about how do we impact with our player coming on with Berry. Probably went a little early, and he hadn't quite had the impact to that point, Dan, on the game. But we're not going to judge a young kid, in the early part of his career on a half a footy. We'll keep looking at what we think's best for the team and what's best for him.
How do you balance the Berry role? Is he almost too good in the sub role for his own good?
Yeah, he and I have a discussion here and there about, it's the old make a coffee for someone, make the first one a bad one so they don't ask you again. He's done that wrong. He's done so well for us as far as his impact on the game and what he brings. And, he has a game that he's a powerful young man, explodes out of stoppage, and if there's a little fatigue around in the game, it really stands out for us. And so it's something that we'll keep looking at. And there's a balance with that. If we talk high performance of, at what point does he start to detrain a little to get through 4 quarters, and he's trained for just a half or a quarter, and so we'll keep an eye on that.
A few of your players in the last couple of days have spoken about how strong the review was, despite the result, that you were still pretty strong in the midfield. Does that sort of show how much you guys have grown in the last couple of years, that despite a close showdown win, it's still looking at the negatives as opposed to the positives?
Yeah, the RFIs, it was actually player driven to start the meeting. You get a feel in each of your review meetings on where the group sits, and I think our players drove a fair bit of we've got to improve on this. We were up against a really powerful midfield in Port Adelaide, and their individuals. We know those guys, they are a very talented group, and they're hard. Now, we didn't perform the way we wanted to out of that, and our midfielders were the ones driving the meeting about, a couple of key areas we didn't get right, more so as a team, which didn't help our midfielders, but we know we've got to be better than that if we want to win games of footy, although it was nice to get a couple in a row. And you make your own luck a little bit with that, because we've got a lot of other areas right on the night, and in the end, they had their chances, but we believe strongly in the footy gods. If we do majority right, have the right intent and energy, we'll get the result.
How big of a game is it against Collingwood and the MCG? The last 4 games have been so tight, but to potentially make a statement against one of the benchmarks of the competition.
Well, it's for ourselves first and foremost. Is how do we remain confident in where we're at, and we get a real test this week to see that on an away venue. We don't play there a lot. We love playing there. We often get Collingwood, in this game, and they've been really good contests over the last few years, where they've had the wood on us, unfortunately. So I know our group, I know the teeth are gritted at the moment. I know they're pretty keen to get over there and go hard, because we haven't come away with the result we've been after. Although a lot of the commentary's been positive the last few games, we're looking for a little bit more than that.
What do you think, Jad, when, I guess, the last time you travelled with Fremantle, you started quite slowly? How do you is there anything you look to address from that? Like, how do you make sure that doesn't happen? So.
Yeah, well, we've addressed that, and it's, sometimes it can come down, our away record is poor and we're not ready to play when we're away. It's not the case. It's been an inconsistency of performance, not necessarily because we're away. We were able to work through that. Going into this week, we put 2 games in a row together. We're confident we'll bring the intensity that we need to. It's been able to be consistent in that each week and not sort of start like we did v Freo. We played Essendon earlier in the year and had a win. There's some games where we could go back, if you want to go back further and look at. We can perform on the road. We're going to go in with that confidence this week, believe in ourselves and have a crack at probably the best team in the comp as it sits.
Will you let Isaac play a full game?
Isaac Rankin on the MCG, yeah. Depends on the score. We'll leave him out there as long as we possibly can. We love what he brings for our group. That's probably all I need to say around that one.
Does the Essendon result feed into this week in any form, or getting done on the G? Yeah. Yeah,
and it's performances we put out there across the years. It's not necessarily results. That's the outcome. If we get the process right, we come away reasonably pleased. But I think, like I mentioned before, we're keen to. We're not going over there just to put a performance on this week. We want the process to be right, and the outcome will look after itself. We learn a fair bit from the weekend about 3 goals up with a short period of time to go, and we were probably lucky to get it done. We didn't nail our method with that. The last few times we've played Collingwood, we've been in the same scenario. So I hope the game's that close again, from a spectacle point of view, and I've got no doubt our guys will get it right.
Marquand takes on, I guess, his former club. Was there any point last year where you were concerned that he might try and go back to Collingwood? It seemed like there was an expectation or, that confidence in Collingwood that they might be able to get him back. Were you ever concerned?
I hadn't really thought about it, to be honest. Kenny and I were in constant correspondence. He went back to Ireland. We were chatting right through it. I would have been shocked if he'd gone back, put it that way. But it was an early part of us getting to know each other and building a relationship, and so you just never know with that sort of stuff. But I was confident he was enjoying Adelaide. He was enjoying the group here and the culture that we've built, and I think that's showing through now. I think the standard of footy that he's got his game to, he's still learning a lot. The weekend was huge for Keeney. We knew that they'd come for him, and they would after showdown last year, and I thought he did a fantastic job on the weekend to just control himself and focus on the footy.
So when he went back to Ireland, you were very confident he'd come back. He'd be back at Westlake.
Yeah. I to be honest, we're looking into list management, and I'm chatting to him over the phone. There's no issues there. Got to be careful what I say here, but he was playing a bit of footy while he's back there as well, or actually hurling. And I knew that was going on, so we're trying to balance, exactly what is it we're happy for him to go into and risk a bit of injury, but we know there's a balance between life and footy, and I think he did that really well.
How much SNFL form eventually get Edwards again? He's one of the former SNFL players in the whole league at the moment.
He was fantastic on the weekend, a step above where he had been again. So, there are a lot of guys that at the moment that are walking into my office and bashing that door down and saying, hey, what does it take? And my response to those guys is just keep being there and being ready. If our team performs and we get a result we're after and guys are playing their roles, it's pretty hard to change that. You've got a group of guys that are getting it done and they're building cohesion throughout that. However, there is a certain level of performance that just says, okay, you have to bring me in. He's getting close to that now, as are a number of others.
Where does Sid sit in that? Sorry, where does Sid sit in that?
City's right in around it as well. Yeah, it's the not the luxury. It's not the right word, but it's why we're in such a good position as a squad. That pressure from below is something you just you can't underestimate what that does for our group, knowing that this is my role in the team, and if I perform it, I'll stay in. And if I don't, I know there's 3 guys, 4, 5, 6 guys ready to come in and take it. So it's the power of squad.
Mitzi, going back to Kenny and hurling in particular, allowing them to go back to Ireland and kind of play that. I know you kind of spoke about the balance. No, I knew about it. But in terms of the balance, because I know that some clubs don't like, people doing maybe activities that don't get them injured. But for Kenny, given he went back to Ireland because he was missing it, how important has it been to be able to let him to do that when he has returned to Ireland to make sure he comes back to Australia and doesn't have that kind of itch to go back there?
It's a footy life balance that you've got to get right. Because your footy's everything and it's the only thing, and then things aren't going right there, it makes it really tough to find your way out of that. So we've always focused on, there's some bigger stuff going on in the world than just footy. And our guys who have found that balance, we find play a lot better from a footy point of view when they're on the field. They've just got a much better life balance. That was one example I was giving you, was our nervousness around a guy. If you've seen hurling, it's basically guys with bats just bashing each other in the head, but he's very, very good at it. So, I got no doubt he came back in a really good headspace.
You become a bit of a hurling connoisseur there.
I might spend my time in Ireland this break, yeah.
How do you go talking to Kenny on the phone?
No, we're all good. It only takes a couple of conversations and you start to get the accent, yeah. We got no issues understanding him now.
I know you sort of spoke about it pre-game on Saturday and you deny that you're a coaching group that is anti-tagging, but when you look at the sort of job that Miles can do on your skipper, and you come up against a guy like Nick Dacos who's shown that if he's not given the proper attention can explode, are you tempted at any point to just go right from the start, first CBA, hard tag?
Yeah, 100% we're tempted. Yep.
Will you?
We don't know yet. We're still going to train, but yeah, he's a fantastic player, and he's very hard to stop. Even with a tag, it's been shown that he can beat that. But yeah, we're extremely tempted.
Would be someone put up their hand, or would you go to someone and give them that task?
I'd say we'd have a few that'd be really keen for it. We've got guys that really love that. Whatever the team needs, we've got a group that will embrace that. So it'll be one of those ones, as I've mentioned before. We'll see how the game looks. We'll see how we come out of training today, but there's always plans in place for these things that. We're not naive. We're not going to stand there and let a guy run around aimlessly. But it also, there are times where you can go to that and it doesn't necessarily work as well as you'd like. And a lot of the commentary can be they didn't tag. Well, maybe we just didn't get that bit right.
Can I just ask where Jake Saligo's at? Started the year on fire. I felt his time on ground last couple of weeks is lesser. Is he carrying something, or is it just a bit out of form?
No, not carrying anything. I think the season, as it drags on, we get to round 8, 9, 10 and into these parts, what you do see with the slightly younger guys is a little bit of a drop away when it comes to their, that sort of performance. You see the older bodies handle that. They've got a lot more pre-seasons under their belt. But no, he's been playing still at a high level, probably not as high as where he started the year, so everyone's expectations have risen. But it's one thing we're looking at, and you look at his game time, it's come off slightly where we're trying to help with that. And then even with training sessions like today, you might see him limited here and there just to try and keep him reasonably fresh. Because his game, when he's fresh, is as good as most.
Thanks, guys.